Good morning, everybody. First of all, it was great to have a chat recently with the Hod, Mark Hodinett, and Dr. Siltman. Dr. Siltman's particularly happy that Italy won the penalty shootout against England. He messaged me, Forza Italia. It was also great, obviously, to have a chat with Pete Dassey and the lovely Becca, and we wish Becca and the rest of the Justice Warriors a good time in Madison. And yes, let's move on to this particular case, which obviously is it's got so many parallels, hasn't it? Things like the Stephen Brendan, particularly Brendan, but also parallels with, for example, Daniel Holtzclaw. Let's have a look at an article about the Bill Cosby case, which actually features a very good friend of the Making a Murderer community, obviously Mark Godsey, author of Blind Injustice, which I'm sure a lot of you have read. And well, I don't know what's the best word to describe some of the revelations in Mark Godsey's book, but it is absolutely a great read. So, and if you haven't already read Blind Injustice, where's my copy? It's here somewhere. I think I've got it upstairs. I've just recently ordered up as well a third book by Michael Cicchini, so I'm looking forward to reading that one. But anyway, let's move on into this article about Bill Cosby. Let's move me out of the way. So this is from Time. What Bill Cosby's release really says about getting a conviction overturned in America. By Janelle Ross, and this was July 7th. We're now July 12th, aren't we? So 5 days ago, yeah. Okay, when the Pennsylvania Supreme Court last Wednesday vacated Bill Cosby's 2018 conviction for sexual assault, freeing him immediately from his 3 to 10-year prison sentence, the disgraced comedian was quick to offer himself as a grand exemplar of the problem of wrongful convictions in the United States. This is for all the people who have been imprisoned wrongfully, regardless of race, color, or creed, Cosby said on Thursday during on a Philadelphia rhythm and blues radio station, WDAS-FM. Let me see if I can just get that just a little bit bigger. That's better. Now, by the end of 2015, more than 60 women, my goodness, that's even worse than Ken Kratz, had publicly accused Cosby of rape or sexual assault over a period of 5 decades. But the case of former Temple University coach Andrea Constant, in which Cosby was convicted, was the only one for which legal time limits for charges had not expired. But despite what he said during his radio appearance, which was just one of many instances in which Cosby has declared himself innocent of any crime, the court's decision to overturn his conviction included no findings about his guilt or innocence. Rather, the court ruled that because Cosby gave damning testimony in a civil case only after a prosecutor promised not to pursue a criminal case against him, Cosby's Fifth Amendment right to avoid self-incrimination had been violated by the use of that testimony as evidence in a subsequent criminal case. And as the Cosby news jolted the national conversation about the criminal justice system, let's just call it the criminal system, the reaction among those who track and study wrongful convictions ranged from celebration to disgust. Each year, about 1 million people are convicted of felony crimes in the United States and several million more of misdemeanors. Of those convictions, about 2% are eventually overturned, says Samuel Gross, a professor emeritus at the University of Michigan Law School, where he also co-founded the National Exoneration Registry, a database detailing cases in which findings of actual innocence or evidence of innocence has played a role in a convicted person's release from prison. The registry includes the details of about 2,800 cases since 1989, where someone has been exonerated under that definition. And about 61% of those people are either Black or Latino. In the type of cases the registry has tracked, false testimony given by witnesses, followed by official misconduct by prosecutors or police, has been the most common cause of a wrongful conviction. Often, there is more than one cause, with official misconduct cropping up in more than half of all exonerations, and many more innocent people, Gross warns, likely sit in the nation's prisons, unable to get so much as a hearing that could lead to exoneration. How true. If only we could have a hearing, Judge Superwitch. But you don't want that. Gross does not anticipate that Cosby's case will ever be listed in the database, no matter what Cosby has said on the driveway of one of his homes, in interviews, in recorded soliloquies. No claims of innocence were formally made or ever considered by appeals courts after Cosby's 2018 conviction. But in general, the bulk of the relatively tiny number of cases in which a conviction is overturned are, like Cosby's, tossed because of procedural and constitutional issues, Gross says. To Gross, the idea that Cosby got out on a technicality, as many tellings would have it, is a grating reduction of a complicated and important process we rely on to produce decisions. But the Cosby case probably won't clarify that process. The rare televised case with a celebrity defendant and an expensive, large defense team, he says, should not cloud the public's understanding of the system, how it works, and what is typical. I like this phrase. The OJ trial and the Cosby case, Ross says, these are unique events and are as similar to other trials as high school football games are to the Super Bowl. To Jennifer Bongine, a lawyer who was part of the latest iteration of Cosby's frequently changing post-conviction legal team, that distinction is unhelpful. She said, instead of people being upset about Cosby's release, they should be celebrating the fact that we have a constitution that protects all of us, she tells Time. Say that to the 60 people that came forward, the 60 women that came forward. And I always remember an episode of the Manitrop Minute where Charlie is not at all happy with Cosby and delighted that he was sent to prison. So Jennifer Bongine, who says she is not insensitive to the feelings of women troubled by last week's events, began her career as a victim advocate at a rape crisis center before going to law school. And, she says, realizing that the biggest underdogs in the system were defendants who were young, poor men of color. After graduating, she worked as a public defender doing appeals work for low-income defendants unable to afford a private lawyer. After she moved into private practice in 2007, she continued working with defendants, but the type of client she was known for working with changed. She's represented and consulted on cases involving Cosby, the convicted rapist and Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein, and reportedly alleged NXIVM cult leader Keith Raniere. Bonjean, who declined to confirm her involvement in the NXIVM case when asked by Time, learned of Cosby's impending freedom later than others last week because it was announced when she was inside a Manhattan federal courtroom where phones are barred, watching the sentencing of the actor Alison Mack for her involvement with the NXIVM group. While she readily acknowledges Cosby is not among the poor clients she once represented, Bonjean considers the court's decision in his case good news for those in need of a public defender today. But we don't want to live in a world where prosecutors go back on their word because of politics, Bonjean says, referring to the way the Me Too movement pushed public sentiment to what Bonjean characterizes as a dangerously influential peak during Cosby's 2018 trial. Do we want to live in a world where the government can dupe you into waiving your constitutional rights? Linda Hirschman, a longtime lawyer, law professor, and author of the book Reckoning, The Epic Battle Against Sexual Abuse and Harassment, doesn't buy the connection. Any claims, she says, that Cosby's freedom advances the cause of equal treatment for Black Americans are without merit. Many of the women who have accused Cosby of sexually assaulting them were women of color, women of color, some of them Black. This told you that in a racist society like ours, Hirschman says, that if you have enough power and money, you get to be treated like a white man for a brief period of time. Hirschman, who practiced labor law for nearly 2 decades before teaching it, was by the morning after Cosby's release upset enough to curse as she described the contents of Cosby's appeal and the rarity of a court's decision to vacate a conviction and send a prisoner straight home. They don't think that powerful men should have to pay for abusing women, Hirschman says about the court's majority decision and her ire last week. You have to confront that possibility because that's the outcome here. Hirschman also takes issue with the majority's reasoning. In the Cosby opinion, Pennsylvania Justice David Wecht compared a prosecutor's assurance that he or she will not prosecute a person to a plea agreement. But Pennsylvania law governing plea deals explicitly requires several steps, such as the opportunity for a judge to approve any deal and often a formal written agreement, Hirschman points out. Cosby had no such document. Rather, a majority of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court accepted the Cosby legal team's arguments that the then prosecutor's statements at a 2005 press conference and in a subsequent press release left Cosby with the impression that he would not face criminal charges, even though the initial district attorney's press release warned that a change of mind remained possible, which is what a subsequent prosecutor did, Hirschman says. For others in the criminal justice world, however, the takeaway is more complicated. One long weekend may not be enough time to resolve the internal conflict unleashed by last week's events. Mark Godsey, a University of Cincinnati law professor, former prosecutor, and director of the Ohio Innocence Project, who describes himself as a supporter of the Me Too movement, is sympathetic to the pain unleashed when Cosby was released from prison. Cosby's conviction had been regarded as a watershed moment, the beginning of long overdue justice for women whose stories had been ignored for decades, Godsey says. On the other hand, he's inclined to agree with Bongine that Cosby's release is a victory for fairness, for a system in which prosecutors must follow the rules and obtain convictions justly. And ensuring such a system is especially important for the sake of the people whom Cosby made a second career out of scolding, and who, despite Cosby's attempts to connect his case to the experiences experts say occupy a different world when it comes to criminal justice. We have got to keep the Me Too movement going and hold people like Cosby accountable. But if we're going to do that, we have to make the system more fair, says Godsey, the author of Blind Injustice. A former prosecutor exposes the psychology and politics of wrongful convictions. And as I say, there are many references to Making a Murderer, Stephen Brendan. Criminal justice reform is an upward battle. I'm not thinking of that email from Steve Drizzen. You know, one wonders what Steve and Laura are thinking when they see Cosby so easily released. And they think of what Len Kaczynski did to Brendan. Len Kaczynski, and O'Kelly, Wiegand, Fassbender, you know. It is an upward battle, but when it is unfair, it screws over people of color, people who are poor, people who are the most vulnerable. Okie dokie. I will pop that article in the description so that you can have a read of that at your leisure. As I say, if you've not got Mark Godsey's book, Blind Injustice, then you really are missing out on a great read. And I'm sure it's available as an audio book. I'm just old-fashioned. I like the paperback, or in some cases, even things like the hardback, The Anatomy of a False Confession. Anyway, I must get on, as I say, to reading this third book by Michael, and we'll catch you all soon. As I say, we obviously things have been a little bit subdued, well, quite subdued, obviously with the loss of Ma Avery, Dolores. She would have been at the rally, no doubt, or maybe not. She was pretty unfirm in 2019. But yes, let's wish Becca and I'll say the rest of the crew, the Wrecking Crew, a good time over in Madison. It's great work that you do, Becca. Keep it going. And Linda and all the other great supporters that were at the rally. Okay, I'm going to I'm going to clear off and get some work done. And we'll see you all soon. Bye for now.